Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here today to share my perspective as a migrant, a refugee, a person of color, and a labor leader. I have lagged many miles to get to this point. I was a child when I left Ethiopia at the age of 13 to escape political violence. After numerous brushes with death, I was given a refugee status by the government of the Sudan and eventually settled here in the United States 32 years ago. I know firsthand how much refugees and migrants can achieve and contribute when they are given a chance. Since arriving here, I have spent my life organizing to ensure that all workers, regardless of immigration status, can exercise their rights and collectively lift each other up. That's why I feel so strongly that we must embrace this historic opportunity to build a more just global system for millions of other migrants and refugees. It is essential that any new commitment on migration empower workers to exercise their rights. We call on leaders gathered here to produce a global compact that gives workers of all skill levels a real chance at family reunification and permanent migration. Safe, regular, orderly is a bare minimum. Instead, we must pursue a rights-based approach that raises standards for all working people. Many existing regular channels for labor migration do not meet that basic standard and are not just, fair, or even, in many cases, safe. From the Gulf region to Southeast Asia and to right here in North America, workers entering circular or temporary labor migration programs face exploitative recruitment practices and restricted in their movement and risk detention, deportation, and if they dare to speak up, threaten to leave or otherwise exercise their rights. These are the fundamental failures of an employer-controlled visa system. Much is made of the injustice of the kafala system, but the pathway for migrants to work in my own country of the United States are not so different. In the United States, the land of the free and the home of the brave, one recent study found that 71% of labor trafficking victims entered on a lawful visa, and victims paid an average of $6,150 in recruitment fees. Another study found that Mexican workers in the low-wage sector H-2B visa program experienced employment conditions and wages as poor as or worse than irregular Mexican migrants in the same industry. This pathway may be regular, but I ask all of you, are they safe? These programs do not empower workers and families, nor do they contribute to equitable development. They merely continue to swell corporate profits at the expense of workers. Expanding such regular pathways, already the norm in destination countries, is the wrong way forward. With xenophobic sentiments on the rise and opportunistic politicians exploiting the real pains of working people, we cannot build equitable society with proposals that further divide workers and exacerbate inequality. We need a different approach that elevates the human and labor rights of migrants and allow workers to exercise those rights without state or employer interference. To achieve these sustainable developments and human rights, we must also tackle the root causes of displacement, including failed trade and economic policies, crushing poverty, climate change, lack of access to education and quality public services, and violence. These elements are clear drivers of displacement, and many are well within the state's power to address. It's time to focus on preventing massive movements rather than simply responding to them. As this summit concludes and the negotiations on the compact begin, we call on all our leaders to shape this commitment through social dialogue, listening to the voices of workers and migrants, not just wealthy corporations. The leadership of the ILO should be central to this effort as they hold the right-based mandate and operate through the established tripartite process that brings legitimacy and balance. As trade unionists, we know firsthand that the protection of migrants' rights is essential to achieving decent work. We continue to demand that our world leaders use this global process to build and to help build a more equitable and prosperous world. And finally, we refugees must be part of policymaking that directly affects our lives, nothing about us without us being at the table. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much.